how did you get involved or just even interested in the original story and Deborah Lipsick's book, Denial, the title of the film is about as well?
There were two. Yeah,
It's always about our kids, isn't it? So, long story short, my son was applying to colleges, and his advisor said to him, "Yeah, that's nice, Harvard and Yale and Princeton. You might need a couple other schools." And one that was recommended to him was Emory University. I was not familiar with Emory, so hopefully, like a good involved parent, I went online and I researched, and it just so happened that on that day they were announcing $1 million endowment to translate Deborah Lipstat's website about Holocaust denial into Farsi and Arabic so that people in that part of the world would have some access to truth. And quite fascinating, caused me to research further, read her book, and that led to this particular story.
Yeah, and as we were talking about this, one day I was watching the UN General Assembly speeches, and Ahmadinejad, the president of Iran at the time, went on this rant about the myth of the Holocaust. And I was, obviously didn't like hearing that, but I also realized that millions of people were watching around the world, and he was presenting, this is going to sound familiar, he was presenting opinion as fact. And it really...
Familiar today, too.
That's what I mean. And so that combined with reading Deborah's book, we realized there was an opportunity to tell a dramatic story, but also create a film that might speak to an issue that at the time we had no idea would be so relevant today, but it is.
So did you meet with Deborah before optioning the book? How did that process
work? After starting a conversation and a relationship with the dean of the College of Emory, he suggested, I think he took a few days to check us out and make sure that we were legitimate. And she happened to be coming to Los Angeles and was at Cedar Sinai, actually, giving a speech. And I was asked to come meet her there. And at the time, we weren't sure exactly what it was. It turns out that her book, Holocaust on Denial, what's the new name of the book?
Denial, Holocaust on Trial.
Yes. And it read pretty dramatically, to be honest, and it surprised me because usually you'd think that these would be very academic, dry, but the journey that she was on, in addition to obviously the story it was telling, I do believe that her first question might have been, would Meryl Streep play me?
Yeah, she talks a little bit about her thought process, because after she met with us and knew that there was an opportunity, and by the way, Participant Media was the company we went to. We were in production on a film called The Soloist at the time, and they came for a set visit and asked what else we were interested in, and this came up, and they got interested in the project. But Deborah says she spent a couple days thinking, do I want to do this? She had comfort with us, but we had done our job of explaining it could take a lot of time. It's not just about the book. We'll want to know about you and about your life and things that you haven't written about. And she, with anybody who gets involved with a true life story, she had to consider it. But fortunately, she trusted us, and we, I think lived up to the obligation.
Yeah, I think that was the first time that the ethic that drove us throughout the entire film came up, was that she said, okay, I'm gonna agree to this, and I'm gonna trust you. Most important to me, her words, tell the truth. Just put it out there as fact, as truth. Don't embellish, tell the truth. And so, what is critical is, every word spoken in that courtroom was spoken in that courtroom. Sir David Hare, who is an incredibly gifted writer, was handcuffed. He would only, it was his ethic as well as ours, he would only write fact, truth, and the actual words.
Yeah, so David took a piece of paper and put it on the wall in his office, The trial was 32 days. He sketched every day of the trial, outlined it, read through the manuscript of the trial, highlighted what he thought was important, met with each of the principals who were involved in the trial, got more information about aspects of it, and then, had to decide, knowing that each scene from the trial would be exactly from the transcript of the trial, had to decide dramatically how to piece them together so that there was a dramatic arc to it, and challenging.
So and you were talking about the writing, but also the directing is pretty impressive too. Could you talk about getting Mick Jackson on board?
So about 3-4 years ago, we got a draft of the script that we all felt was ready to show to directors, and as we all do, we made our list and we submitted it to some people. Mick sought us out. His agent called and said, please spend 20 minutes with him, hear him out. He's extremely passionate about this subject. And we had breakfast with him. Mm-hmm. He was really clear and articulate. Mick, when he's focused, it's just, you can't stop him. It just, you sit back and you listen. And he went for about 45 minutes without a breath, I think. And we felt, okay, he deserves to go in front of the studio, and he impressed them as well.
I think it's fair to say that a lot of what he talked about with us in that morning is in the film that you just saw. I mean, he obviously worked also, by the way, then put him and David together, and the collaboration between the two of them was quite valuable.
Yeah. So David is a great dramatist, playwright, and screenwriter. Mick had a cinematic vision for the film. The script was in darn good shape, but why is it a movie? This is your question. Why is it a movie? So he spent a lot of time putting the visual components into the film, and yes, it's a courtroom drama, and we know there's restrictions there, but the Auschwitz sequence and trying to figure out how to create some dynamic to the cinema of the movie, and he was really good at. His background is in documentary filmmaking, and he wanted that kind of feel to
raw
the movie.
Truth.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of on-set locations shooting, especially the
it's
London
all,
courthouse.
It's all location.
So that's the real courthouse where the.
It wasn't the real
It
one.
is a real courthouse.
It was an active courthouse.
We had to go to great lengths to get a lot of permissions on this film, and the Royal Courts was one of them, even just to be able to shoot the exteriors where and how we did. It's 3 different pieces that make up that courtroom. And by the way, the permission that we had to get from Auschwitz was not at all easy.
Yes, I wanted to ask about that. I mean, how does that work for a commercial film shooting there? It
wasn't easy. We made more trips to Auschwitz, which
place I never thought I would go in my
is I don't if you haven't been there, it's an awesome and difficult place to go to. But bottom line is this movie was about truth, and we made the case to Auschwitz that if they didn't in some way work with us to figure it out, then we'd have to create everything ourselves, and wouldn't we then be committing the same crime that David Irving did by fictionalizing the Holocaust? And they understood that.
The other pressure I know that we felt was, it was also one of the first things Mick said when he came aboard the picture is, I really want to shoot there. I really need to shoot there. And when Rachel was coming aboard the picture, it's like, well, we're really going to shoot at Auschwitz, right? Yeah. They had already said no to us twice. So it was a challenge.
We had a lot of pressure.
Yeah, we had a lot of pressure.
And you worked with a Holocaust survivor. Did you talk to any survivors? And you obviously talk to scholars a lot. What was that process like, even with Deborah, about talking about?
Well, Deborah was our go-to. She's one of the world's foremost scholars on this subject. To be honest, yes, we spent time with all the principals, but David Hare, he wanted to hear from the people that were involved in the case, and he didn't want to hear from outside. He didn't want to be tempted. And so we stayed very disciplined about that.
He had extensive meetings. I mean, I know I'm switching the subject a little bit. Extensive meetings with Richard Rampton, with Anthony Julius, and with all of the
Richard
experts in
Evans.
the trial. Just pages and pages and pages of notes of his interviews with them. Going back for a moment, though, to your question, Deborah was hugely instrumental in us ever succeeding at Auschwitz as well. They said no to even a meeting with us, and then she called, and they said, "Okay, I'll see you," and that allowed us to even get in a room and have the discussion. But she promised them in that meeting, when they film here, I promise you I'll be there, and I will make sure that they do it right.
We there's a perimeter fence around Birkenau, and on the other side of the perimeter fence, it's public. They could not stop us. In fact, when Steven Spielberg did Schindler's List, he worked outside the perimeter fence. And we were looking for very specific locations, and we found some areas which are in the film with them waiting and him pacing the fence line. But we needed a delousing chamber. And there was a section of the perimeter fence that went this way, then went this way, and the road was out there. But there was a hut on the other side of that perimeter fence. And so from our point of view, it was outside the perimeter fence. And we had a very intense meeting at Auschwitz where no. And then finally we said, but it's outside the fence. Look, here's the line. And the head of Auschwitz, who's a fantastic guy, Piotr Tsavinsky, put his head in his hand and he goes, fine, but don't ask me for anything else. It was a huge win.
But flashing forward, they have seen the film.
Yeah.
They're very proud of the film. It was a really, really wonderful moment to get their reaction.
I want to thank you both for being here, and thank you all for coming. Thank you.
Thank you.